It was a cold evening in the small town of Greenville. The streets were almost empty, and the sky was painted with orange and gray clouds. A little girl named Amara, around 12 years old, walked slowly along the road, holding a torn paper bag close to her chest. Her clothes were old, her shoes were broken, her face looked tired, but her eyes were full of hope. Amara lived in a poor neighborhood on the edge of town. Her mother had been sick for months and her father had left long ago. Every day, she searched for leftover food behind restaurants or bakeries, just to feed her mother and little brother. But that evening, something told her to walk a different way, a road that led to the richest part of Greenville. As she walked, she saw big houses, shining cars, and gardens full of lights. She had never seen this side of the town so closely before. Then she stopped. In front of her stood a huge mansion, quiet and dark, surrounded by tall iron gates. The nameplate read, Mr. Ethan Cole, CEO Cole Industries. Everyone in town knew about Ethan Cole. He was a millionaire, once famous for his kindness and success. But after a terrible car accident, he became paralyzed from the waist down. People said he never came out anymore. Some said he had lost all joy and trust in people. Amara stood outside the gate, her stomach growling. Through the iron bars, she saw a man sitting in a wheelchair near the window. He was staring at something, maybe the sky, maybe nothing. She could see sadness on his face, even from far away. For a few minutes, she hesitated. How could a poor girl like her talk to a man like him? But she remembered her mother's words. Miracles don't come to those who wait. They come to those who knock. Taking a deep breath, Amara opened the small side gate and walked up the long path. The mansion looked even bigger now. She could smell fresh bread and soup coming from inside. Her heart beat fast. When she reached the door, she rang the bell. A maid opened it, surprised to see a thin girl standing there with dirty clothes. "What do you want, child?" the maid asked, almost closing the door. Amara looked down and whispered, "Please, I'm just asking if I can have some leftovers. My mom is sick. My brother hasn't eaten since yesterday." Before the maid could reply, a deep voice came from inside. "Who is it, Clara?" The maid turned around. "Sir, it's just a poor girl. She's asking for food." Ethan Cole's wheelchair rolled into view. His face was pale, his eyes tired but sharp. He looked at Amara for a long moment, silent, unreadable. Finally he said with a faint sarcastic smile, "Leftovers. You want to trade my leftovers for a miracle, little girl?" Amara didn't understand what he meant, but she nodded softly. "Yes, sir. If that's what it takes?" the maid gasped. "Amara, go home," she said quickly. "This is not the place for you." But Ethan raised his hand. "Let her stay." The mansion became silent again. The clock ticked. Amara stood there, shivering, unsure whether to speak or run. Then Ethan said, "You think miracles are traded like food? You're either very brave or very foolish." Amara's voice trembled. "Maybe both, sir, but I just want my mother to live." For the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir inside him. Curiosity, pain, maybe even hope. He looked at this small, desperate girl. Something about her eyes reminded him of someone he had lost long ago. He smiled faintly. "All right, little one. Let's see what kind of miracle you're looking for." Outside, the wind grew stronger, and the mansion lights flickered to life, as if something powerful was about to begin. The wind outside howled louder. Pushing against the old windows of the mansion, Amara stood in the large hallway, her heart beating so hard that she could hear it echo. The marble floor was shining, and golden frames covered the walls, pictures of people she didn't know. But one photo caught her eye, a woman with kind eyes holding a baby. Dust had settled over the frame, as if no one had touched it for years. Ethan Cole noticed where she was looking. "That was my wife," he said softly. His voice changed, lower and slower. "She died in the same accident that left me like this." Amara turned quickly. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. He gave a weak smile. "Don't be. Life takes what it wants." The maid, Clara, cleared her throat and said, "Sir, maybe the girl should go now." But Ethan looked at Amara again. "No, she asked for leftovers, didn't she? Let's give her dinner." Amara froze. Dinner. No one had ever invited her to sit at a table like this before. Clara tried to argue, but Ethan raised his hand again. Bring another plate. Soon the smell of roasted chicken, bread, and soup filled the air. The long dining table looked like something out of a dream. Amara sat at the very edge, afraid to touch anything. Her hands shook as she picked up the spoon. Ethan watched her closely. Eat, he said gently. Food is useless if no one enjoys it. She nodded and took a sip of soup. It was warm and soft, the best thing she had ever tasted. Tears formed in her eyes. Thank you, sir, she whispered. Ethan turned his wheelchair slightly. Tell me, girl. You said you wanted a miracle. What kind of miracle are you looking for? Amara stopped eating. She looked at the tablecloth, then at his tired face. My mother is sick, she said. The doctor said she needs medicine that costs more than we can ever pay. I thought maybe if I asked someone kind, they could help us. Even a little. Ethan laughed quietly, but not out of joy. Kind, he said bitterly. People call me many things, but not that. Clara frowned. Sir, quiet, Clara, he said sharply, then looked back at Amara. You think kindness is free, little girl? You think miracles just appear because you ask for them? Amara didn't blink. I don't know, sir. But I believe that God sends people to help others when no one else will. Her words hit Ethan like a wave. For years, no one had spoken to him about faith, hope, or kindness. Everyone around him only talked about money, business, or pity. And here was this poor child. He was talking about miracles in his own cold house. He looked at her torn dress, her skinny arms, her brave eyes. Something inside him, something long dead, began to move again. All right, he said finally. If you want my help, you'll have to do something for me first. Amara's eyes widened. What do you mean, sir? Ethan leaned forward. I'll give you what you want if you can make me believe in miracles again, Clara gasped. Sir, that's cruel. Ethan ignored her. You said you believe in miracles, Amara. Then prove one exists. I'll wait 1 week. If you can show me something real, something that makes me feel alive again, I'll pay for your mother's treatment. Amara stared at him, unsure if he was serious or just mocking her. But then she saw it, a flicker of challenge in his tired eyes. I accept, she said firmly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You do? Yes. 1 week, sir. I'll show you, Ethan smiled. A strange mix of sadness and curiosity. Then let the game begin. As Amara left that night, the mansion lights dimmed again. The rain began to fall, whispering on the windows like secrets. Inside, Ethan sat alone at the table, looking at the empty chair where the girl had sat. For the first time in years, he didn't feel completely alone. But little did he know, the miracle he asked for was already walking out his door. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the cracks of Amara's small window. Her little brother Noah lay beside their sick mother. Amara watched her mother's weak breathing and whispered to herself, 1 week, I can do this. She knew Ethan Cole wasn't joking. The man's eyes had tested her, cold, sharp, but curious. He had given her 7 days to make him believe in miracles. She had no idea how. Outside, the sound of old buses and street vendors filled the air. Amara put on her torn shoes and tied her mother's scarf around her neck. She kissed her mother's forehead before leaving. Hold on, Mama. I'll bring hope back, she said softly. At the mansion, Ethan sat near the window, watching the garden where no flowers grew anymore. The wheelchair was his prison now. Every morning looked the same, quiet, colorless, meaningless. Clara served him breakfast and asked, Sir, are you sure about that deal with the girl? Ethan smiled weakly. Why not? Maybe she'll fail and finally prove me right that miracles are just stories people tell to comfort themselves. But what if she doesn't fail? Clara asked. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he looked outside, his eyes far away. Then I'll have to face something I stopped believing long ago, hope. That afternoon, Amara stood in front of the mansion gates again. Her small hands clutched a notebook she had found in the trash. Inside, she had written ideas, flowers, music, kindness, light. None of them felt like a real miracle, The guard saw her and called out, "You again? What do you want this time?" Amara lifted her chin. "I came for my challenge." Ethan overheard from the window and told the guard to let her in. She walked in slowly, nervous, but determined. When she entered the hall, Ethan said, "So, little one, day 1 of your miracle week. What will you show me?" Mara looked around. The house felt like a place where joy had died long ago. She said quietly, "Your house is sad, sir. I want to change that first." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You want to fix sadness with what? Paint and laughter?" She smiled a little. "Maybe both." The next morning, Amara brought small wildflowers she had picked from the roadside. She placed them in a broken glass near Ethan's window. Clara tried to remove them, but Ethan stopped her. "Let's see where this goes," he said. Then Amara began cleaning the dusty shelves and opening the curtains. Light filled the mansion for the first time in months. She even hummed while working, a soft tune she used to sing to her brother. Ethan watched her from his chair, pretending not to care. But inside he felt something strange. Warmth. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked. Amara smiled. "'Cause miracles don't come to dark places, sir. They need light to see the way." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept hearing her voice in his mind. Miracles need light to see the way. Day 3 came. Amara brought her little brother, Noah, to help. He was shy, but cheerful. Together, they made simple drawings and placed them on the walls. Ethan rolled his wheelchair through the hall, staring. At the pictures, smiling suns, bright stars, and stick figures holding hands, Noah looked up at him and said, "Sir, my sister says you used to help people. Were you a hero?" Ethan froze. "A hero? No, child. I was just a man with money." Noah grinned. "Then maybe you forgot how to be a hero. That's okay. My sister says people can change." Ethan looked away quickly. His heart felt heavy. That little boy's words hit deeper than he expected. That night, Ethan went to the old photo frame again, the one of his wife and baby. He touched the glass gently. For the first time in years, he whispered, maybe they're still watching." Outside, Amara stood under the porch, watching rain fall softly on the garden. She didn't know what kind of miracle she was creating yet, but she knew something had started to move, not just in the mansion, but in the man's heart. 3 days had passed since the challenge began, and the mansion no longer felt as dead as before. Sunlight entered every room, laughter sometimes echoed in the hall, and even the maids started smiling again. Ethan noticed it, but said nothing. He told himself it was just noise, nothing more. Yet something deep inside him was shifting. The heavy silence that used to comfort him now felt strange. He caught himself waiting each morning to hear the sound of the gate opening, the moment when Amara would arrive. That morning, she came running in the rain, holding something carefully under her jacket. "Good morning, sir," she said cheerfully. Water dripped from her hair onto the marble floor. Ethan frowned. "You'll catch a cold, girl," she smiled. "I've been through worse, sir." And she took out what she was hiding, a small wooden box. "What is that?" he asked. "My secret project," she said proudly. "But you can't open it yet. Not until the last day." Ethan chuckled quietly. "A mystery, HM? You think suspense will save your miracle?" Mara grinned. "Maybe, sir. Happy stories are the best kind of miracles." Clara, the maid, walked in with tea and muttered, "This girl fills the house with noise and dust. And somehow, it feels better." Ethan pretended not to hear, but his lips curved into a faint smile. Later that day, Mara sat by the fireplace, while Noah played with a small wooden toy Ethan had given him. She turned to Ethan and asked softly, "Sir, can I ask you something?" Nodded. "Why did you stop painting?" Ethan looked surprised. "How do you know I ever painted?"
"Saw the brushes in the study," she said.
"They were dry and full of dust. You must have loved it once." Ethan turned his wheelchair toward the window. Rain streaks ran down the glass like tears. "I did. My wife and I used to paint together. She said colors could heal sadness. But when she died, every color turned gray." Mara's voice softened. "Maybe the colors didn't leave, sir. Maybe you just stopped looking." For a long moment, Ethan didn't speak. The fire cracked softly. Then he whispered, "You speak like someone much older than 12?" Amara smiled sadly. Hard days make people grow fast. That night, after Amara and Noah went home, Ethan sat alone again, but this time the silence felt different. It wasn't heavy, it was thoughtful. He looked at the old brushes she had mentioned. His fingers trembled as he picked one up. Slowly he dipped it in color for the first time in years. His hand wasn't steady, but the moment the brush touched the paper, something opened inside him, a flood of memory, grief, and light. He painted the sky first, then a river, then a little girl standing by a tree. He didn't realize he was smiling until Clara saw him. "Sir," she whispered, "you're smiling." He blinked, confused, then laughed quietly. "Am I?" It felt strange, like remembering how to breathe again. The next morning, Amara arrived to find the painting near the window. "You did this?" she gasped. Ethan nodded, embarrassed. "It's not much. It's beautiful," she said softly. "You brought color back?" Ethan stared at her. "You did that, Amara?" But before she could reply, his expression changed. He noticed how pale she looked, her eyes tired, her hands trembling slightly. "You're not well," he said. Amara forced a smile. "I'm fine, sir. Just tired." Ethan frowned. "Don't lie. I've seen that look before." She looked away. "My mother's worse," she said quietly, as the medicine's finished. "But I'll keep my promise. I won't stop now." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to help her immediately, but part of him held back. He remembered his rule. The challenge must be finished. Still, that night, as she walked away in the rain, Ethan felt something breaking inside him. For the first time since his accident, he wheeled himself toward the door and whispered, "Please, let her be safe." He didn't know it yet, but that prayer, his first in years, was the beginning of his own miracle. The rain didn't stop that night. It fell heavily on the small tin roof of Amara's house. Inside, her mother lay weak, her breathing shallow. Amara sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. Noah slept in the corner, clutching a blanket that barely kept him warm. Amara's heart hurt. She wanted to cry, but she didn't have the strength. She whispered, "Mama, please stay. I just need a few more days. I'm so close." Her mother opened her eyes slightly. "My brave girl," she said softly. "You've already done more than I ever dreamed. Don't lose hope now." Mara nodded, wiping her tears. "I won't, Mama. I promise." The next morning, Amara arrived late at the mansion. Her clothes were wet again, and her face looked pale. Clara rushed to her. "Child, you look sick. You should rest." But Amara shook her head. "No, ma'am. I came to finish my miracle." Ethan heard her voice from the hallway. He turned his wheelchair and looked at her, a small, fragile figure standing in front of the massive door, shivering but smiling. "Come in," he said gently when she entered. He noticed something different in her eyes. They were filled with pain, but also light. "You didn't bring your brother today?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "He's taking care of Mama," Ethan sighed. "And how's your mother?" Amara hesitated, then answered honestly. "She's getting worse, sir." He felt a sharp ache in his chest. He wanted to help her, but pride and fear still chained him. He didn't want to hope, not again, not after losing everything once before. "Amara," said softly, "you don't have to keep coming. You've already done enough." She shook her head. "You said 1 week, sir? It's not over yet." That afternoon, Amara took out the small wooden box she had been hiding since the beginning. "It's time," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "So, this is your miracle?" Amara nodded. "Yes, sir. But before I open it, I need you to promise one thing." "What is it?" "No matter what happens, you must keep believing, not in me, but in yourself." Ethan looked confused, but he nodded. "All right, I promise." Amara smiled and opened the box. Inside was a small painting done with careful strokes of color. It showed Ethan sitting in his wheelchair, surrounded by flowers, with a bright sun behind him. And beside him stood a young girl holding a book and smiling. Ethan stared at it in silence. His hands trembled as he touched the painting. "You painted this?" Amara nodded. "With the broken brushes you left in your study, I used what I had, a little color. a little light. I wanted to show you how you look when you smile again. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. For years he had hidden behind walls of bitterness. But now, a poor girl had painted him not as a broken man, but as someone who could still shine. He whispered, "Why would you do this for me?" Amara looked straight into his eyes. "Because you helped me when no one else would. You gave me food when I was hungry. You gave me a reason to hope. Maybe that's my miracle, helping someone remember how to live again." Ethan tried to speak, but couldn't. His throat tightened. He realized she wasn't just trying to save her mother. She was saving him. That evening, as the sky turned golden, Amara stood by the gate, ready to leave. "Goodbye, sir. Tomorrow is the last day. I'll come no matter what." Ethan called out, "Wait." He wanted to tell her he'd already decided to help her family, that she didn't need to prove anything anymore. But the words stuck. Instead, he said, "Be careful, child." She smiled. "Always." As she walked away, the wind picked up. Ethan sat by the window long after she disappeared from sight. He looked again at the painting, at the girl's bright smile beside his own. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole prayed not for himself, but for a little girl who believed in miracles when no one else did. But deep down, a shadow of fear crept into his heart. Something told him that tomorrow would change everything forever. Morning came quietly, but something felt wrong. The sky was gray, and the air was heavy. Ethan Cole sat near the window, staring at the road where Amara usually appeared. Every minute felt like an hour. The gate stayed closed. Clara entered the room, holding a cup of tea. "Sir, you should eat something." Ethan shook his head. No, she should have been here by now. He tried to distract himself by looking at the small painting Amara had made. His smile, the flowers, the sunlight. It gave him comfort and pain at the same time. Hours passed. Still, no sign of her. At last, Ethan called out, "Clara, prepare the car." Clara looked confused. "Sir, you can't drive." "Then call the driver." "I need to see her," he said firmly. The car rolled through muddy streets until they reached the poor side of town. The rain had left puddles everywhere. People stopped to stare, a rich man in a wheelchair, stepping into their world for the first time. When they reached a small house made of wood and tin, Ethan's heart tightened. The door was slightly open. He could hear quiet sobs inside. Clara knocked gently. A young boy opened the door, Noah. His eyes were red. "You're Mr. Cole," he whispered. "My sister talked about you." Ethan's voice shook. "Where is she, son?" Noah stepped aside. Inside, Amara lay beside her mother, her hand resting over her chest. Her face was pale, peaceful to peaceful. Ethan froze. His fingers trembled as he moved closer. "No, no, no, no," he whispered. Clara covered her mouth in shock. Noah cried softly. "She went out last night to find medicine. She said she would come back with a miracle, but she never woke up this morning." Ethan felt his world spin. He couldn't breathe. He had promised her a week a chance, and now it was gone. He touched her small hand. It was cold. "You stubborn, brave little girl," he whispered. "You kept your promise." Tears rolled down his face, the first in years. Clara stood silently, her eyes wet. Then Ethan noticed something near Amara's pillow. Another wooden box. He opened it slowly. Inside was a folded note and a tiny painting of a sunrise. The note said, "Dear Mr. Cole, if you're reading this, maybe I didn't make it back. But that's okay. Because miracles are not always about saving life. Sometimes they are about saving hearts. You already gave me mine hope. Please smile again." That's all I ever wanted. Ethan held the note close to his chest. His heart broke, but within the pain, something began to glow, warm and bright. "Like the sun in her painting," he whispered. "You were the miracle, Amara." Days passed, but the world around Ethan had changed. The mansion was no longer cold. Flowers grew again in the garden. Children from the town came every weekend to play there. Ethan had opened a small foundation in Amara's name, the Amara Hope Fund, to help poor families and sick children. Every morning, He placed her painting near the window, where the light could touch it. He would smile at it and whisper, "Good morning, sunshine." Clara often watched him from afar. "She saved him," she said once to a gardener. "That little girl saved him." Ethan now spent his days painting again. His new favorite was one called The Miracle Girl, a picture of Amara standing under a golden sky, holding a small wooden box. He displayed it in the town's community center, with a note underneath, "Miracles don't always happen in churches or hospitals. Sometimes they walk into our homes wearing torn shoes and carrying hope." Every visitor who saw it cried a little, smiled a little, and left believing in something bigger than money, kindness. On a warm afternoon, Ethan sat in his garden, surrounded by laughter and flowers. A gentle wind brushed his face. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "You did it, Amara. You won." And as the wind passed through the trees, he swore he heard a soft voice reply, "Told you, sir. Miracles just need light to see the way."